Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What is awesome health? It's actually an acronym that stands for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mental beliefs and attitudes, and education. These are the pillars of peak health, and my team and I have created a free 12-week course that you can use to transform. Each day, you'll get a written and video lesson delivered to your inbox. Everything is covered from the foundations of digestion to advanced alternative therapies few people know about. And again, it's 100% free. Just go to bioptimizers.com. That's bioptimizers.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's Wade T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers with another edition of the Awesome Health Podcast. And today, we're going to talk about how your greatest life crisis is a signal from your heart. And science behind heart intelligence and why the heart is meant to lead your way in life. And this is not some hokey pokey stuff. There is actually scientific literature that's indicating that perhaps our heart is more intelligent than our brain. What does that mean? Well, we're going to find out in today's podcast because we have Dr. Madalina Petrescu and Cris Agafi, a couple based in Seattle. They're both international best-selling co-authors, certified coaches, and rising leaders in the heart intelligence space. Today, with over 2 decades of combined experience in the field of personal and spiritual development, alongside Madalina's 17 plus years of experience as a leading cardiologist, they've culminated everything into the Heart QTM lifestyle, which we'll find out more about that in a few minutes. They teach this as a part of their mission to create a more connected, conscious, and loving world. They do this with inspiring and guiding individuals to escape the stress and limitations of their minds and discover the vitality and freedom of their hearts through heart intelligence. And they join us today from their home in Bellevue, Washington, just across the border from my old hometown, Vancouver, Canada. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Wade. Thank you for having us.
That's great to have you here. Okay, all right. So there's, I see the world's kind of divided up into 2 types of camps. There is what I would say, hardcore, intellectual, left brain. We need data, we need research, we need science, we need models, we need standard deviations. The world of science, which has produced a considerable amount of the technological innovations that we enjoy today. And then there's another camp, which is, I would say people who lean towards the, airy-fairy, new age, heart center, spiritual base, back to nature, mother this, love that. And these 2 camps, I think we get exposed to in the human condition as we meet various people or live in different places, and different areas are supported. So for example, one of my favorite places is Sedona, Arizona, probably more on the heart side center of the world. If I go up and hang out with the guys in finance in London, if I start bringing that stuff in, I'm probably going to get thrown out of the room. Down here in LA, it's kind of a mix between the airy fairies and the intellectual savages. So where are we? How, tell me about living this heart center. Like how did you guys come to this idea and put this forward in the world, and why is it so important right now?
Oh my gosh, so much. Just we can spend a whole hour, doing that. I think it's so fascinating the way that there's like this division between, living this way of life versus living that way of life. And then we've been in our journey in all of it, like in everything. And we've seen those people who are like super in their oneness and their bliss. And they're just like those mental people, like those guys are, they have no idea. They're just like out living in the matrix, not even living life. And then you have the intellectuals that I've been a part of because as a physician, and they're just like those airy fairies. And there's like this complete shutdown between each other. And in our journey, what I can share is like, that's exactly where we're coming in to actually bridge, science and spirituality. So we don't have one or the other, this versus that, because by the way, that's, again, it actually goes against the heart. The heart is about oneness. It's about, there's a reason why we have a powerful mind. We're not supposed to just shut it off and just live in the heart. Like, there's a way to actually bring it together. And that's where heart coherence comes from. We can talk about that later, where when you are letting the heart lead the way, there's a coherence that is created, which actually increases your IQ, it increases your EQ, and it activates your health and longevity and well-being. So there's like a oneness and a harmony that is actually created. And this is exactly what we are standing for, and the message that we have, that doesn't have to be one or the other. It's both, it's together. And where it comes from, well, it all started kind of based on the journey that I had. It kind of started with me, I guess,
It
right?
did start with you.
Where, about more than 10 years ago, I want to say like 12 or something, 15 years ago, on the outside, it looked like, wow, she's so perfect. I had it all, busy, successful cardiologist, a leader, a director in multiple expert fields. I was a teacher, faculty teacher, international speaking engagements that I was in, mother of 2 girls, and an amazing husband. I was always into fitness and eating healthy. So I always looked fit, and everybody's like, wow, how is she so perfect? Like, I wish I had her life. But that was on the outside. On the inside, I was struggling. I was actually not happy. I tried to hide that from myself, but I was living literally on survival, a pressure and things that I had to do. First of all, the life of a cardiologist is just like massively crazy busy. I mean, like long hours, call burden, life and death emergencies. You have that. And then all the other things I said yes to that I was doing, and then trying to be a mother, so like there was never a time for me. Everything was first. Everyone else was first. I was literally always running on the treadmill all the time, trying to keep up with everything. And I didn't realize at that time that I was living actually life from these unconscious patterns of workaholism, overachiever, perfectionism, people pleaser, yes sayer, self-denial. And it got me to the success. I was on the peak of the mountain. And then I was like, hey, where's the joy? Where's the fulfillment that's supposed to come with getting to the peak of the mountain? So then, and the way I kept going in that life is I would run, because running was my answer to everything. So then I would just run and run. So then I wouldn't face anything. I never had time to be present with myself, because that was like a waste of time, right? In that consciousness that I was in. And so basically, no time for emotions. I would try to come up and give me messages, like no time for that. So I would just run my way to stay positive and keep existing in the matrix until I had a major injury. And I went on my usual run, and then I came back with severe back pain. And here's me, who's like the ambitious go-getter. I'm going to eliminate this right away. Didn't go away. And not only that, but over the next year that ensued, the pain progressed my entire body. And I usually don't take pain meds. I was taking pain meds. I was taking sleeping meds, plantar fasciitis, iliopsoas, sciatica. Like all of a sudden, I went from being an athlete to like now being completely like barely able to walk. Like even walking was painful. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Am I just crazy? For 1 year, we went to doctors, studies and studies. Nothing showed up. I thought I was going crazy. And of course, I was frustrated. Of course, now all those emotions that before I would run away from, now I didn't know how to deal with. And so, of course, this then evolved from this one pain crisis. It evolved into anxiety, depression, and then it evolved into an existential crisis. Like, what is the meaning of my life? So this was actually, I didn't know it then, but it was actually for me. Like I needed to break down whatever I was operating from, that unconscious way, that psychologically programmed way, needed to crack. I had to let it run its course and not try to numb it. Like I could have taken pain, I could have taken Xanax, I could have taken Zoloft, and then I would have been happy and then avoided facing what I needed to face, right? So ended up that after 1 year of, all of that, total breakdown, and that's with crisis, I became open. I was like, give me anything at this point, man. I'll try anything, like anything. And that's when I opened up to spirituality. That's when I got the book by Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer. And then I was like,
which book by Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer?
You Can Heal Your Life.
Oh yes, yeah, that's a great one.
And then I saw that book, and then there was something by Wayne Dyer. I don't remember the name of the book, but it was one of his books.
Your erroneous zones or something.
And then I was reading, and I was like, what? Like what? Because now I was making time for me, because all the energy I gave outward, I now brought inward. And because I couldn't run anymore, I like literally life brought me to a stop. So I entered the space of being. And then I used that as a portal to go into myself, to open to awareness, to open to truths about myself. And then, we together immersed into like all just journeys and journeys. Like we couldn't like hunger, like, oh, I see what's going on. I see what got me here. Oh, I see why I had to do enough in order to feel enough. Oh, I see that the trauma that I never dealt with and the communism things that happened, now it's all like ruling my life because it's in the unknown. And I have no idea that I'm coming from unconscious programming. And then it was a whole, it was years and years of like unbecoming who I wasn't and being more of who I was, and unlearning, deconditioning, deconstructing, falling apart. And, all kinds of work that we did in multiple realms, and we got certified along the way, because if we're going to do it anyway, let's get certified. And that's from all these journeys of all these years, we ended up, it's that journey back into my own heart all the things that we picked up along the way. And then as in medicine and science, bringing all of that together, that's how we created. We said, wow, there's like the IQ, there's the EQ, there's somatic intelligence, and now there's heart intelligence. And we have forgotten what it means to live from our heart. The society is living out here from the mind, and everything from here is coming mostly from the unconscious matrix, which is operating at the level of stress, nervous system energy, creating diseases, creating anxiety, creating depression, creating separation. And that's the problem. It's the elephant in the room. And so we started doing this work, and this is what we're so passionate about, to bring people into the simplicity and the wholeness of their heart. And it doesn't mean that you have to go all the way on the other end and be like, woo, you can be in any realm of any profession, in any space, and simply connect and engage with your heart, create heart coherence. And now you're showing up differently, not from, let me do all of these things to be enough and to have love, but I am that already. I am already that, to tune into the truth, to tune into the love, and live life based on that purpose and wholeness and truth. So that's our passion. And anyway, I got all excited.
Great.
As always.
Cris, I want to share your insight, what was going on for you during this period of time as well, because I think so much of when we hear stories about individuals who've gone through a transformative process, and usually it's they face some crisis, we hear the story of the individual, perhaps, but not always the partner or the family members that might have been involved at the time. So what was going on for you during this time with your partner's kind of like crisis, renaissance, transformation? How did you see that, witness it? What was the experience like for you, and what conclusions did you come to?
Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, and part of I love the way you put it, like the crisis / renaissance, so in the crisis stage, being her partner and seeing what she was going through, I was feeling her pain. I was experiencing her pain with her, empathically. And I felt helpless, to be honest. I really felt helpless because I'm not an expert in the field. We went through, for 1 year, to all the experts, to the doctors that treat, the Seahawks, football teams, and like all the experts that you could find in the area, right? And no one could figure it out. So for me, it was like, well, if there's no solution, what can I do? And I was trying to be there for her emotionally, right? Supporting her in this way. But it was hard. It was truly a challenge. And I did feel at times helpless, like, okay, what else can I do? But then after a year, when she found, she started going on this path of looking more inside than, more like this view inside out versus outside in, then I noticed that things started to change for her. Just the way that she was dealing with life, the way that she was interacting with life, the way that, her emotional state in meeting life, right? It was different. It was more empowering. It was more inspiring. And so at one point, I think it was like maybe a month or 2 months into this journey after she first found that book and really applying what the book was saying, I noticed changes. And so I went to her and I said, hey, hold on a second. What exactly are you doing? Like, you don't seem as stressed anymore. You seem to be dealing with life in a more beautiful way. What exactly are you doing? So she kind of opened the doors for me, to kind of see what's going on and what is she learning and what is she applying. And so that's kind of what got me on that journey as well. And then afterwards, it was just this, first it was an uphill, to be honest, right? Because as we unlayered, as we looked at ourselves and we started looking at oh my God, look at this pattern. Oh, look at this pattern. This is this is not me. This is something that I was conditioned, that I accepted as a truth for myself, but it's not mine, right? It belongs to, my caretakers in the past, or even evolutionary, right? As we were starting to unlayer all these things, we were literally getting to experience more of our true selves. And being able to be aligned with that authentic you is so empowering. Like, there is a power that comes from that. And when you meet life, when you experience life from that place, it's a whole new ballgame. I mean, literally. It's funny, just yesterday, we were talking about this, and she reminded me from this one book that we read a while ago. This formula of life, if you want, which is so perfect. It's so perfect, so simple, yet so perfect. E plus P equals O. Okay. Which basically means E is the experience, right? The events that is happening in your life. P is your perception of those events, right? Equals outcome. So when we changed the P, the events were still there. Nothing had changed in our exterior world. But when we started to feel ourselves different, and then from that new lens that was us, view the world, our perception of the world became different. The outcome started to change, So yeah, it took some time, but this has been our evolution.
So let's dive into the science of the heart coherence and some of the things that you touched on earlier, because some people say, okay, well, that all sounds really great, blah, 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 blah. I can see the critics kind of go, oh no, here's another sing songs around the campfire.
Yeah.
Sorry. Let's talk about the science, coming from a medical background and relying on scientific validation before you're going to take somebody's, put someone's life in your own hands. And, technological innovations have been extraordinary and have allowed us to do many things that we couldn't possibly do throughout human history, or at least the human history we've been given. Where does the science step into this conversation? How is this validated or provable, or where is this coming from? And what have you learned?
So powerful. There's so much data. I'm going to see if I can bridge it all in together. So first of all, the heart actually has a electromagnetic field. Every organ in your body actually generates and emanates an electromagnetic field. And the heart electromagnetic field is 5,000 times that greater than that of the brain. So that's interesting.
Can I interject that? Can I interject on that for a second? Yeah. Because one of my friends is a fellow by the name of Dr. Horst Filzer, who put the first stent in the body. He's part of the Harvard team that did that.
Oh gosh, yes.
And he had a student that built a mechanical heart.
Mm-hmm.
And he told the student, it's an amazing device, but it's not going to work. And his student says, well, why is that? He said, the actual pumping capacity of the heart only represents a quarter of its capability to pump the blood through the body. It's an electromagnetic machine, and those electromagnetic pulses is what moves the body in the extremities of where blood is pumped through a pumping action, which has been proven. And of course, Dr. Filzer was right. He's also he practiced Mahayana Zen, and he's a very heart-centered fellow, even though, he's obviously doing surgeries for, most of his career. So this is a really important component, this electromagnetic aspect of the heart and the electromagnetic effects on the physiology as well as maybe the consciousness, because they're correlated.
Yes. So this is
people think of the heart as just a pump, but it's a lot more than that.
So much more than that. And I'm going to give just a little bit of that, because even when patients are coming in, I'm there to like open their eyes to the awareness. So what happens is, so that field, when you create that, that's the feeling that people have, when you're in that flow state, when you're in your heart. So when you're in a flow state, when you're on purpose, when you're like just totally from your heart, you're actually creating energy. It's a creating energy. It's creative energy or generating energy, which actually can be measured and quantified. The scientists have shown that. Whereas when you're in a state of stress, that whole field shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, because stress eats away the energy, consumes the energy. So it takes all the energy that you have, including from the heart, in order to deal with the threat. And that's why people are like depleted and tired and they have no energy and they can't think. So that's just one of the things. Now, so powerful. The studies that have been shown, the link between heart intelligence, mind, emotions, body, health, all of it, it's all connected. We are physiology, we're all connected. So what happens is this: when we're not in our heart, when we're not plugged into our heart, and we're just kind of going in life, stressed out, having this emotion, judgment, criticism, separation, just living our life, that stress, basically the heart actually is like a record. It receives that information and it generates, there's actually more connections from the heart to the brain than from the brain to the heart. So when the heart is receiving that stress and the heart is receiving that energy, it actually sends the message to the brain via this pathway called heart rate variability. We don't need to worry about that, but it's like this waveform that is created. And you can tell the stress because it creates these chaotic, incoherent, jagged signals, electric signals. And these signals are then sent to the brain. The brain receives that and interprets it as danger, war, bad, not safe, threat. And then the brain then starts becoming incoherent more. And it starts generating a whole bunch of cortisol and adrenaline. And MRI studies have shown that when that's happening, your frontal brain, the smart brain, actually shuts down. The amygdala, which is that kind of like the reactive brain, activates. And now you're more reactive. You're not using your brain. The corpus callosum, which is kind of like between the two hemispheres, become deactivated. It's been actively shown that the area of the memory, hippocampus, becomes activated. So you're just living life and your body's flooded with stress and cortisol. And now you're living in this state of war. You're having a negative impact in your cardiovascular system, in your whole body. You're directly inhibiting your immune system. So this is what's happening in the default, because most of the time when we're just living life and we're not we're not taking the initiative and actively engaging with the heart, that's what life ends up being. Because most of the information is coming from the unconscious matrix. And we know that psychological research has shown that 95% of the time, what's driving people's behavior, choices, and actions and ways of being is coming from the unconscious mind, which harbors all the limiting beliefs and all the patterns. And all of that is operating on stress. It's all happening on the nervous system energy. So that's what's happening, right? Whereas the studies have shown that when you create coherence, so when you're intentionally connecting to your heart, when you're in a state of a heart emotion, care, this is done by heart math, care, compassion, gratitude, a heart emotion, a heart-based emotion. Now what's happening? You're generating that electromagnetic field. Now from that space, your heart starts to generate these harmonious, coherent signals, which then get transmitted to the brain. The brain perceives that as all is well, all is good. I can let go. I don't need to do something. And it trains into the level of the heart. You can even see like how the heart signal starts first, and the brain has the same exact morphology of the signal, and it comes after the heart. So it entrains to the heart. Now there's a state of coherence. It's called heart-brain coherence. And MRI studies have shown that when this happens, it's shown, like it's literally black and white. Your brain, which is like barely lighting up because we're not using all of our brain. Now, when there's heart coherence, the brain is lighting up in the area of the frontal, conscious, intelligent brain. The corpus callosum, so the signals between the two brains are now activated. So now you have a greater access to your entire conscious brain. And that's why you're like having these ideas and creativity and able to access parts of your brain you normally can't. And the studies have shown that the amygdala, which is that reactive brain that makes people reactive and impulsive and all of that stuff, that gets deactivated actively. You can see that on MRI studies. Like it's like piece of, like you can see it, no question. Even a non-medical person could see that. And so, and the hippocampus, memory gets activated. Your memory, so much of the people that are like dementia and all of that is based on the way you're living your life. Mm-hmm. And now your body, now your brain is secreting a whole different chemical cocktail. Chemicals and biomarkers and hormones that are produced and now flooding the body with pro-relaxation, pro-healing, pro-joy, pro-well-being. Your telomeres are now getting lengthened. And that's why your body now is in a state of coherence. And you can feel it. Your body can heal. It's impossible to heal when your body's living in the survival pathway. Because in the survival pathway, your energy is being taken away from the immune system and literally needing to deal with a threat at hand. But now you're actively, like this has been shown by hardcore science, where you can see like thousands, I'm not just talking about a chemical here and there, thousands of biochemical reactions that are activated, that are basically turning on the healthy genes, turning on the well-being genes, and downregulating the cancer genes and the disease genes. Like this has been quantified and showed in scientific studies.
Very exciting. So on a practical application side, how does someone move from, say, a more head-based to more heart-based type of mentality? Because we live in a world that I was listening to a neuro scientist the other day who's an expert on neurochemistry and said, a great example is like dopamine is kind of like the rewards system of pleasure, and serotonin is the rewards, is essentially the reward center of happiness. And we have we're exposed to a tremendous amount of dopamine or dopogenic pathway inducing devices, which leads to physicality and exhaustion, and it would, if used over time. So all the stimulation and most of the messaging that we get via media, social media, information side is some sort of fear-based messaging, which causes a danger reaction, fight or flight, stress, amygdala response, constriction of the blood vessels, all the negative chemicals because I'm under attack or under war, or I can't achieve this, or I've got to get this, or the brain is now operating at this fast, decision-making process. But there's actually no physical threat to you. It's a threat response to an artificially generated threat. And what you're saying is a lot of people are living in this kind of if I understood correctly, this kind of biochemical response mechanism, which leads to breakdown, like in your own case, which there was no external there was no physiological indicators of why this was happening. But if you were probably doing, samples of understanding the biochemical cascade, it was like, okay, we've hit exhaustion here on the Seeley response, and we've got to activate and develop a new methodology of dealing with the world if I'm going to survive. Mm-hmm. And to create this anabolic, healing, regenerative kind of component, how does one who might recognize they're in the early, medium, or late stages of this fight, flight, stress, head-based mechanism that are listening to this right now, how do they switch out of that into this heart-centered world, and how would they measure that process? Because sometimes Cris, you touched on there were observational aspects being, Madalina's partner. You could see, okay, she's not responding to the situation the same way. There were cues that you were picking up that didn't require a 12-week double-blind study with 100 patients. oh, this lady, she's acting different. So you had a real world. How does one measure this both clinically? And then how does someone measure this like or quantitatively and qualitatively? And what would be the suggested ways of engaging in that?
Do you want me to go or do you want to go? Or?
Well, you speak to the clinical part because I think you're more yeah, go ahead.
Well, so this is the shift that needs to happen is so important. Tell me what you do and I'll tell you who you are. Right. And most people, when they get up, they're just getting up, running, remembering all the things they have to do, getting all stressed out, running on the treadmill, trying to survive. Oh, you have to get home, never have time for me, and then make it home at some point, work harder, go to bed, start it all up again. And then maybe at the end of the week, okay, let's go get some drinks and let's just watch a whole bunch of movies and freaking relax. Like even the doctors are like, oh, I just want to go for a glass of wine and watch some movies, like just get out of here. So then the time that they get me time, it's not really a me time. It's really a numbing time. Let me just do something to like numb and I can just not think about anything because I can't take it anymore. Right. So that's actually not a true way of being in the heart. So it really, I think, is so important to have the awareness of everything we're talking about.
I just want to highlight that for 1 second. That most people's coping strategy with the brain is to numb out. Like you distract yourself with a video, you drink some wine, you smoke a joint, you do whatever, you
go shopping,
you do retail therapy, you engage in some sort of, sexual aspect of whether that's normal or deviant, depending like where you are. Like, but these are kind of like, they're low resolution strategies just to shut it off, but it's not, there's a difference between shutting off or distracting than to actively doing something is what you're designating here. We've conditioned to do this distraction numb out program, but that's not the answer because you don't deal with the underlying case. What you're talking about is actively engaging to activate this positive biochemical cascade.
Yeah, I'm so glad you paused on that. That's so good that you did that because it's actually such an important distinction. And if you look around, most people, they're doing that. When they're saying, I'm relaxing, if you go deeper, you'll realize that they're not actually relaxing into themselves and being in their authenticity and generating all of that. They're actually just distracting, shutting down, numbing, distracting, escaping, actually perpetuating more patterns that are going against themselves. And then deep down inside, they're like, why am I not happy? That's because there's such a huge gap between who I am and what I'm doing. Now they're going even farther away from themselves. That's one of the causes of depression and anxiety, by the way. So, because you can only do that for so long, because that can only go along for so long. And then it cracks on its own. So then we need to become intentional because what happens is this way of living is a default. This is the default. Everybody kind of gets there unless you're like living, you're growing up into a very conscious family. I mean, we're trying to do that for our girls, but and even then, so most people are, unless you're born on a different planet, it's happening to everybody pretty much, so we call that the default. So then the way that you start to shift more into the heart-based of living is practices. It's becoming intentional. It's not going to happen on its own. It's not just like, oh yeah, I guess I should do that. It's basically saying, no, you know what? I need to put me first. I need to put me first because that's what true heart aligned and authenticity means, is that I'm putting me, my authentic self first. Nobody's going to do it for me. And all these things like about, I don't have time or there's this and that, those are excuses because at the end of the day, we are the creators of our life and we can choose and we can start small. I mean, that's how it works. There's this really important aspect of becoming the creator and owning ourselves, like I'm owning my life and I can continue on this path, which is not working out for me, or I can create something different. So I think there's a really important part here that the invitation to become the creator and act and own that creator and put ourselves first. So what happens, the recommendation is two things. One is starting the day with practices that get you into the heart. So before you go into all of these things that need to happen, you start your day. As soon as you wake up, you're like an alpha state already. Like your mind is already like coming from, you're not going the beta energy yet. And from that energy, it's moments of being. We're human beings, not human doings. There's a reason why, whoever out there called us human beings is to remind us that we're actually here to be with ourselves, so we can discover and experience ourselves and enhance our electromagnetic field and create this biochemistry before we go out and engage with the world, with people. I mean, we can only serve at the level who we are. We're not serving based on the words that we're saying. We're serving based on the energy that we have, based on the consciousness that we have, and based on what we emanate energetically. That's how it works. So morning practice of whatever that looks like, whether it's going out into nature, whether it's meditation is what we teach. We're meditation teachers. Meditation, it doesn't mean shut your mind off and shut your thoughts off. It means let's create a space where you're being present, feeling and experiencing who you are, and you're being present to that. And that's what.
Just to talk on that from the meditation, because there's a variety of different techniques. So there's, the eyes up, kind of Indian style that was, we're bringing energy and saying. Then there's like the Zen style with eyes down, which are more feeling. And then there's, people talk about heart-based meditation. Some people are like no mind meditation. There's these various types of meditation. So I want to break that down about the separate style, because there's meditation that leads to detachment, meditation that leads to non-attachment, meditation that leads to hyper concentration, meditation that leads to maybe heart-centeredness. So when you say meditation, what do you feel is the best sort of meditation to move oneself out of the mind of cognitive thoughts into this heart-centered feeling base that you're kind of essentially activating, if I understand correctly? Because I want to just paint things over with meditation, because I think a lot of people miss the boat on that.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com.
Completely. I'm so glad you're really good that you paused on that. I think you wanted to say,
actually,
and then I can.
Yeah. So just really quick on that, because, at the beginning of this conversation, you mentioned something which I feel like it's so true, so valid in how the world works, if you want. And it's like the underlying theme almost of this conversation. You mentioned that, we're kind of like in camps, and we keep, fighting. The different camps keep fighting each other. And, when we do that, there's like a separation. It's almost like the way that I see it is like we are putting ourselves in boxes, right? And then layers and layers of boxes. And when I'm in a box or a camp or whatever metaphor you want to use, I believe that whatever I believe is the right thing. So there's this one thing that I believe, and I'm right, everybody else is wrong, right? So our invitation is always to say, well, let's flow between the boxes. Let's not be in camps or in boxes. Let's kind of flow in between and just kind of like experiment. Try this, try that, see what works. Because even with the meditation, I think the fact that you brought this up is such an important point, because in our experience, we get this a lot where people are so confused and always these questions of, well, how should I get out of my mind? How should I get into my heart? How should I do this? How should I do that? All of these questions are off the mind. The how is off the mind. So the answer to that question, like what is the best way to get out of the mind is, and more into the heart, it depends on the person, right? What we practice is instinctive meditation. This is what we teach, instinctive meditation. So we have to actually understand how the person functions, like just, you know, the mind and the beliefs, their life experience that they bring to the table in order to understand what is that meditation style that that works for them to come out of their mind. Because, you know, for example, someone that has been practicing meditation, let's say for a while, without much success of, you know, if let's say that they want to quiet the mind and go more into the heart, right? So more feeling based, more than thinking based, right? We deal, you know, the approach would be very different with one person like that versus a person that has some kind of, you know, PTSD, right? Where they're always on high alert, and they need to have their, let's say, their eyes open, right? In order to make sure they're safe. Because if they don't feel safe, nobody can go in themselves. So there is this level of safety of the mind. The mind is the one the mind is the part of our system that feels the unsafety, right? And so if we can get people to come from, you know, feel safe, and again, it depends on every person, that's when we can start going into the heart. And what we always say is that, you know, the language of the mind is thinking, thoughts, right? And the language of the heart is feeling. So if you're gonna start thinking, how can I quiet my mind? Then it's going to be very challenging to quiet your mind because you're thinking about quieting your mind. So the goal here is to not think about and just more step into the feeling. You cannot, our experience has been that you cannot do something by trying to move away from it or trying to reject it or trying to separate yourself from it. Because the more you do that, the more you're going to experience that. Like, don't think of an elephant. Don't think of a pink elephant. Everybody's going to think
Don't think of a pink elephant. That's all you think about.
So you're going to get more of that. So the goal is, instead of focusing on that, just not doing something, we replace that with, well, where do we want to go, right? Well, where we want to go is in the feeling. And the feeling is the heart. So what can we bring that brings you into the feeling, right? And the very, very simple way is to, I mean, there's so many ways, but just a simple technique is just think of something that, or bring into your consciousness, bring into your awareness, a person that you actually have feelings of love for, or an event that you have gratitude for, and then leave the person, leave the event. Don't focus on the event, but focus on the feeling. It's just about reminding your heart how to feel again. I think that we've been conditioned for such a long time to think, and don't get me wrong, the mind has created amazing things, as you've mentioned in the beginning. We've created so many things. Everything that's around us has been created by the mind. But even the scientists like Einstein and other one, they've recognized the power of the heart. And in the old days, I don't know, I'm thinking about Middle Ages now, but everything that couldn't be explained was magic, right? Everything that couldn't be explained was magic. Now that magic is, or the explanation is science. So yes, science is catching up. The things that would used to be woo-woo or, out there, like heart coherence, what we call now heart coherence, and all these things that had to do with the heart. And I'm not talking about the biological heart, the physical organ. I'm talking about the energetic heart, right? The spiritual heart. All of that is now starting to be backed by science. Science is catching up. Even all scientists will tell you that whatever we can measure, the extent of the measurement and the accuracy of the measurement depends on the instruments that we use. So there are, even HeartMath was saying that, they can measure the energetic field of the electromagnetic field of the heart up to a specific point, but that's only because their instruments, that's what they allow. Yeah. So as we improve our instruments, as we improve our understanding of things and bring science more into it, then that's the bridge that's being created between the different camps, let's just say, and that's when we can start flowing between camps.
But and to come back a little bit to just because I also like I like to bridge, and I know that people also need a process. It's like it's so easy if you just, these are the 4 steps, because it kind of sometimes like, well, what do I do again? Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think it's like, I've noticed like even with patients and clients, a process is like, okay, I got that. So like 4 steps, basically, like a 4-step process. So the first thing you start out with, the first step is you slow down and breathe. What happens is when you're slowing down your mind, because you're like in general, the mind is always operating high frequency, beta, high frequency, running forward, running backward, thinking, analyzing. We're not ever going to get into the heart this way. So then you start to slow down and you bring your breath. And when that happens, the more you just slow down and breathe, now you're bringing your mind from the beta to the alpha path. You need to get into the alpha in order to connect to your heart. The alpha, which is a little bit lower frequency, slowing down. Now you're opening. So what happens when you take deep breaths and you're slowing down, now you're relaxing. Now you're jumping from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system. And now you're coming more into the space of being, not just doing, because you can't do it, It's just a couple, you can do that for as long as you want, but just even 3 slow, deep breaths. First step. Second step, now you're more suggestible. Now you're more open. So the second step, you bring your awareness to your heart. And then as Cris was saying, when you bring your awareness, just energy flows where attention goes. So you just touch your heart and you now bring your awareness there and feeling, like you were saying, feeling a heart-based emotion. You could even say, I feel gratitude. Just even the word, now you're open to the energy of that feeling and you're feeling it. You're not just saying the word. And if it's hard to get that feeling into your body, that's when you bring a person that makes you happy, that you feel love from, or you bring an experience that really brought you a lot of joy and love and just made you feel so happy and free. You bring that to your space right now so that you can generate that feeling within your body. And now as you're doing that, by the way, that experience of that feeling, now you're opening up that electromagnetic field. And now you're actually starting to get your heart in that place of coherence that we were talking about. And so now you're in that space. And by the way, when you're in that space, it feels so freaking good that sometimes you don't want to ever leave, because once you're able to generate that, be in that state and be in the presence of your heart and who you really are, it's like these are the peak states that people talk about. These are like the flow states, from that energy. Third step is you simply, if you have something that you have a question about or like something you need answers, you bring the question in that state. That's the third question, whatever the question is. And then when you ask the question and you let it go, and then you're just simply listening and receiving, and you're gonna get that answer at that time. And then the fourth step is now you take action on what you heard. Because a lot of times people know what they need to do, but they don't take that action. And that's a misalignment. So many people are like, oh, I know, but nothing's being done about it. So that's kind of a quick, 4-step process, into like how people can create that. But the whole point of that second step is that you can literally rest there and be there present for as long as you want. And the whole idea is that it's not about, it's about becoming present with your heart. It's not about focusing on this thing or that thing. It's simply receiving the fullness of who you really are. Because most people never do that. Most people just wake up and they rush out of bed and they're doing all these things, or they're just following protocols. But when do we get a chance to actually tune into the incredible, like the authenticity and the presence that is within ourselves? And the more that you can generate that, the more the electromagnetic field. And so that's the quick and easy, way. And then the whole thing that happens as you go through in life is just being in a state of presence and reflection. You just basically, let me take a deep breath. Oh, there I went in that pattern. Come back to my awareness. What do I choose? We don't need to react. Reacting means I'm not choosing. I'm being a victim, right? So we can choose. So it's just having intentionally that heart presence and heart awareness. Oh, there I went in that pattern. Okay, I'm coming back to myself. What feels? You pause. you're pausing, and eventually you can get in. That's exactly where the flow states come. When you're so deeply here from your heart, you generate such powerful fields. And those people that are like on purpose and in alignment and all of that, now you're living on purpose, you're making choices based on what's in alignment. And now life is going to be very different when you're making choices that are in alignment. Imagine if people were to actually start listening to their own truth on how they should eat, how much they should eat. Should they exercise? They're not asking, what do I feel like? They're asking, what is my heart? Like, what is my highest wisdom about this? Now, very different choices are made in relationships. That's easily the way you measure it is you look at your life and you see, are things working out for me? How are my relationships? Are they harmonious? Are they in war? How is my health? How is my anxiety? How is my depression? How is it working out for me in alignment with my work? That's how you start to look at the outside life, which is always a reflection of our internal life. Life is always, outside world is just a reflection of who we are.
Yeah. And I just want to add something, because you made a point, and I just want to emphasize that, a lot of times we get this a lot, actually, where there's like the question is, how do I stay? How do I live always or more in this, heart-centered state, right? And I feel like there's a misunderstanding about that, because it's not about being in that state all the time, right? Mm-hmm. It's about always coming back. When you realize that you've left, your alignment with yourself, pattern, right? You go into a pattern, you go into reactivity, you go into, because of your nervous system and all of these things, right? It's just about coming back to that intentional state, right? So then, it's in coming back without judgment, without self-judgment, with compassion. Oh, okay, no problem. I left. Let's come back, right? This is what we call heart resilience, right? Resilience, the traditional resilience, is when you fall down, you get up and you go back up again. Keep pushing, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a bulldozer style of resilience, and it's fine. It works. Right? It gets people up again. It gets people, back on track, and it's perfect. It's good. However, how would it be to, when you fall down, when you get up again, you go back into yourself first and ask, is this aligned? Is my efforts, my goal, what I'm moving towards, is that aligned with me, with what I want? How many times, and you can speak for how many times have people climb the corporate ladder, the ladder of success, climb their mountain, and then they get to the top of the mountain and they look around saying, I made it. And they look around and say, oh, hold on one second. This is not my mountain. I never wanted to be on this mountain. I've climbed somebody else's mountain, right? Because we never stop to ask, like, is what I'm doing, is it aligned with me? Right? So it's always about coming back. And this is the heart Q lifestyle, right? The heart intelligent lifestyle, to just always come back and go into realignment.
So let's talk a little bit. We talked about kind of the experiential aspect of living in a coherent, heart-centered place, and some of the strategies elicited. I know there's a lot of people in this community that are using various ways to measure it. So we have HRV is one of the things that you touched on. Maybe you can talk about that. There's neurofeedback, which is another way when you're talking about brain states and how to measure when you're in the various brain states, or train oneself or develop different brain sets. I'm a big fan of neurofeedback. And then we have the other class, which we haven't touched on, which a lot of people are using right now, which is various plant medicines in combination with CBT. So we see this emerging field of psychedelic research, its ability to kind of break open different states of awareness. And now, which was all kind of, pushed aside for a long time, but there's a resurgence of that in scientific literature. So whether that's people going on, a traditional guidance psychedelic experience, going to the Amazon or something like that, and a shamanic experience or Native American methodology, versus now we have little clinical studies where controlled dosages of psychedelics are administered under the care of scientists, and they're actively recording people switching states. So with HRV, neurofeedback, psychedelics, where do those place, if you think they do have a validation or use? What are the dangers of that, of going inside that, and how might people leverage this or any other technology that you're aware of to be able to start to measure their, if you, for lack of a better word, their nonlinear feeling-based experiences, as opposed to, there's always a quantitative measure, but there's also another aspect of that quantitative measure that's not captured by the instruments. It's not captured by the gamma wave. It's not captured by the alpha wave. It's not captured by the neurochemistry, but there is a feeling or a sense of awareness or a newfound way of seeing or experiencing life that emerges from people in those areas. Any thoughts about any of that stuff?
Yeah, I'm just gonna speak and you can share. So it's really fascinating, to be honest, because now a lot of things that were like taboo and bad and like, oh, don't do it because it caused a lot of bad things to happen. Like the psychedelic research. I mean, the research is very easy to see that you can look at all the studies and see all the MRI studies that, of course, you got to do it in a very important way to make sure that it's safe and all of that stuff. But the studies have shown that, see, what happens in our brain normally, like if you were to just look at any person randomly, if you were to look at their brain, they're operating, like if this is your brain, here, the surface area, people are operating in this little tiny thing. And then over the course of the years, this is who I am. This is what I do. These are my patterns. These are my beliefs. This is my possibility. This is what, and that's it. You're just like, you're actually by the way, children, if you look at MRIs of studies of children, their whole brain is activated and lighting up. They're like, in imagination, I can do this. That's why they're like, I can do anything. There's no limitations. They're like, give me that thing and I'm going to go right after it. They're in states of joy and presence. Like MRI studies are showing that. That's why the kids are our greatest teachers. When you look at them, right? And then over the course of time, they're like, from all the life experience of what do you think you're doing and blah, 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 all these conditioning, psychological conditioning. Now, over the course of time, you get reduced to this little part of your brain, and then you just keep rewiring it, strengthening. You're just living and operating this little box, but it's not even within the awareness. You're not realizing you're living in a box, but that's what's happening. So what psychedelics do is that's basically like the ego experience of your life. That's who I think I am, what I think is possible, what I think. And your I think is just based on your experience and based on fear and survival. So what happens to these psychedelic experiences that by the way, that can become so strong. And people, by the way, are living from trauma that they're not even aware that it was trauma. And they're just living in that nervous system energy. And that's the reason for most of the diseases, by the way, and anxiety and depression. The nervous system energy eats away at people's health, eats away at the inner peace, eats away at well-being, eats away at like my abundance. And so people are living like that in this tiny little area, and they're not happy. Like, I'm trying to be happy. I want to be, I'm not. Things are not working out. I'm sick. All of these things, right? So with psychedelics, that part becomes deactivated. And now all of a sudden you have capacity to experience the fullness of what is available. And MRI studies have shown like everything starts lighting up the same way when you were a child. And now you're like, oh, that's possible. That thing that I didn't realize was possible, that's possible. Like all these neural pathways that before you can no longer see now, because as we get older, we just get entrained into our ways of thinking and feeling, now all of that becomes available. And that's what shifts people out of that hardwired mental analysis. This is who I am feeling, and I'm so limited. And the way that literally is by how do you feel? How does life look like to you? Is your life abundant or is your life limited? It's kind of like, how am I feeling about me? How am I feeling about my life? How are your relationships? How is your health? How is your mental state? How is your creativity? Like, how are those areas? Like from 0 to 10, where are you? And, the more that you're in this little thing, you're going to see that most of those areas are like in the very lowest. No. And so, yeah, that's the power of psychedelics. It's just, there's many ways. That's the thing. I'm actually almost done with this program called 8 Portals into the Heart. 8, because it's infinite. There's infinite ways. There's not just one way. Everybody has to find that thing that works for them. There's infinite ways. Like I'm talking about 8 ways. So this is one way where you're getting out of yourself, out of the limited, conditioned self, and into the fullness and limitless that you really are. So that's the power of psychedelic experiences. I think the problem, whoever's listening to that, you have to really, really want to bring out that you got, this really needs to, this is not something like you just, let's just go do it and whatever. No, you gotta, there's a process, this can really literally shift people massively, so you got to make sure that there's an intention, there's a ritual, you're doing it in a safe setting, you're doing it with someone like that. You have to make sure it's in a controlled. That's a problem, by the way, with all the deaths and all the problems and the bad taboos, is because people were just like doing it in an irresponsible way. So we got to have a responsibility around that. Now, this is just one way. There's so many things. We're practitioners of Kundalini activation method. Kundalini is just another experience where you're getting out of yourself, because that's really what it comes down to. How can you get out of the limited self that you're so entrenched into? And you can't get out of it by, I want to get out of it. It's never going to be like that. So that's where you try this. We have Kundalini activation, where you actually have a way of activating this life force energy, and you create gamma state in your brain, and like alpha and gamma states. And now you're out of the thinking mind and you're more into the feeling, body, experience, heart. These are just a couple of examples, but it's really infinite. It's really, what is it that helps you to come into, because even with the psychedelics, it gets you into deep states of being. You're no longer in the thinking, you're coming into that very infinity of being. Now you're being. Now people don't give themselves the permission to be, because there's this push to do and do and do and do and achieve and ego, right? So it doesn't mean that now you're just going to stay present and meditate all life forever. But it just means that when you're starting your day like that, when you're walking life first, being present to who you are, now you're no longer just reacting to the patterns that you're not aware of. Now you're responding and being guided by this powerful intelligence form within you that only you have access to. Nobody knows that for us. Nobody. And then once you do that, your brain gets entrained into that. And now your brain can operate a very high level of consciousness and flow states. And your health is massively. I mean, you can see that people who are there, they look young. They have this youthfulness about them. Like they don't seem to age, they don't get sick anymore, because now you're having access to the natural medicine. You're out of the nervous system, which creates sickness and disease and anxiety. And you're more into the kind of the flow state of the heart. And that is that's the platform for health and well-being. And I think you want to say something.
Yeah. She's so in tune with me. She knows exactly just what I'm feeling next to me. No, it's true. I just want to add something to the psychedelic part. I think it's very powerful, to be honest. And I'm glad to see that now there's like a new resurgence, if you want, of and trust in this methodology. At the end of the day, why, we may understand things intellectually, right? We may understand something intellectually, but what truly moves us is when there is a dropping of that understanding at a somatic level. When even in the language our society uses, like, I get this with every fiber of my body, right? When it just somehow it drops into the feeling somatically. So, like Madalina mentioned, that we tend to function in just like a very small box that we've created for ourselves over the years, and now we're convinced that that's who we are, right? And that's what's possible for us. We may think of, this thing is possible. Anything is possible. But as long as you don't think that's possible for you, nothing is going to change for you. You have to believe it. But believing that something is possible for you intellectually is just not enough. So that's why with psychedelics, that part of you that you have become so, biochemically, and entrenched in it and locked into it, right? And convinced of the truth of what that is, it's hard to get out. But when you are using psychedelics, that part shuts down, and now all this possibility becomes available. And anyone that has experienced psychedelics is not just this intellectual experience. It's a full body experience. You get to experience all this possibility that you see in your mind, but it's connected to your body. You feel it. That's why so many times people come out of an experience saying, I can do anything, right? Of course, the guidance is so important, because, if you're not doing it for consciousness purposes, and just for recreational purpose, I mean, I guess it has a value, to do for recreational purposes, perhaps, but there's no advancement there. There's no betterment of yourself in any way, right? So I just want to say that, yeah.
So I want to interject one piece, because I think one of the trends that happens, particularly in high performers who have, as you said, maybe have climbed the mountain of success and they're like looking at what else, or finding another mountain, and they climb maybe several mountains over a period of time, because that tends to be a tendency of high performers. But now they've got to move out of that into this. And as they start to enter into maybe a more heart-centered life, there is a sense of fear that tends to come up. Well, who am I going to be now if I'm not the board certified, the professional athlete, the go-to guy at my firm, the leader of my company, the head of my like whatever that designation earned and component, as that starts to fractionate a little bit from the initial experiences of oncoming, oftentimes up comes another crisis of, hey, you know what, I'm out. I don't want to lose my edge. I don't want to not become here. How do you coach people maybe through that experience? Because it's something I've witnessed happening amongst high performers, that once they slip into this, it's not comfortable, because who am I now if I'm not the goal machine?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what happened to me. I mean, I was like all the labels you can imagine. Like literally, I had them all, like all the medals and everything. Like I was the highest of the highest of the highest. Mm-hmm. And what the way through this really, the more that people are guided, and I needed guidance, because Einstein, you can't create the same you find the solution to the problems in the same consciousness that created it. So it's going to be hard to, like, in that same consciousness, get there. But basically, the bottom line is this: when you start to discover, to feel who you really are, that experience, you can never let that go anymore. You can't, so what we do is we really support people and guide them into supporting them to open up to experience who they are beneath all these layers, because the pain is going to happen. So it's just part of the process, but the pain is going to lessen the more that people are activated, that they're connected to the light of their, I'm looking at your name, the light of their heart. So the more that they are really connecting to that presence, that feeling, everything else can be held. You hold space for it, because the more you start to, wait, I am whole. Oh, wait, I am so abundant. I don't need to do anything to be the love that I am. I am powerful. I am at peace with myself. Like when you actually feel that, then whatever else is coming that's crumbling down, the more of yourself that you can feel, the more you can hold space for all of that stuff that's crumbling down. It's still crumbling down for me. There's still things I'm letting go of. And I'm saying, wait, what do I care more about? Me and my authenticity, what I'm here? Or do I keep betraying myself and I keep just holding on to those identifications out of fear? So it's really, the more we can support people to experience that fullness, it's not as much about thinking and I'm going to tell you how you do it. It's more about the more they experience it. For me, the more that I experience myself as who I really am, there's no way I would trade that for anything. And then everything else that I'm experiencing, pain is part of life. Breaking down is part of life. Like, that's humanity. It doesn't mean now in your heart and everything's beautiful and like harmony and rainbows and ponies and sunshine. It's not like that. But now you can actually hold space. You have the capacity to hold space for what before you could not. Because before you can't. That's why you have to stay attached to these labels. And that's why you need them in order to feel me. So that's the beauty of the journey. That's the journey of life, and it's an invitation. Not everybody has to do it. Some people are perfectly happy in remaining in whatever those titles and those roles are, and that's okay. Everybody has their own timing. This cannot be forced, and you'll know if it's for you by the way that you feel when you're in those states of yourself, and that invitation is open. It's an open invitation from our hearts.
Yeah. And, you bring up a good point, because, you mentioned high achievers, and, I feel like there is a misconception that, again, it comes back to that way of viewing life in camps or in boxes. Oh, I'm a high achiever because of this reason, but now if I go on this other way, like even the words that you use, I'm slipping into that. Now I'm not going to be this because I'm going to be that.
Good point.
Right? Mm-hmm. But it's not, you can view life that way. And to me, that's a very disempowering way to view life, right? Our philosophy is that there is no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. Mm-hmm. Is it empowering or disempowering? Is it inspiring or uninspiring, right? So having this view of life where I'm a high achiever, but now if I go into this heart coherence, heart-centered way of living, now I'm losing something. I feel like it's a disempowering way. So what I'm usually inviting high achiever clients to do is to invite them to see how does it feel to take on this view where doing something like this, like doing having a more heart-centered approach to life is actually adding to you being a high achiever.
Yeah.
Right. High achievers are always looking to go higher, go further, and they're always looking at usually external things, right? This pill or that thing, that experience that will somehow enhance me so that I can have a higher achievement, right? But what if that thing that you're looking for, I'm not saying, there are some things out there, but what if some of those things are already inside of you? Now, of course, high achievers are also very, mind-based and very science-based, right? So they would want some kind of evidence, right? Everybody is like that. So, again, heart math has so much research on this, right? And there is this experiment that's been done where it talks about the intuition of our heart intelligence and how our heart can actually feel things before they happen. Like how would that be? How would it be to have that kind of a power, if you want, as a high achiever? And the experiment was very simple. I'm just going to say it in 30 seconds or 1 minute. Basically, they had the subject look at a screen, and they would flash either a very, let's say, gruesome image or a very beautiful image, like a bunny or whatever, right? But the subject would never know what image would come next. It could be 3 gruesome ones or 2. They didn't know. And in between those images, there was a black screen, right? So the image would appear, then it would be black screen, and then another image would appear. So the subject would never know what image would come next or how long the black screen was on for. So they didn't know that interval of time. So they measured the EEG and the EKG, right? They had the mind and the brain and the heart to notice the reaction. So what the result was, and this has been reproduced many times, but what the result was that when the subject would see a gruesome image or any image, the brain would react right away. Like right away, the brain would start reacting to that image. And there was a pattern. There was a pattern to reacting to gruesome images, and there was a pattern to reacting to more beautiful images. And the heart would do the same, right? The heart would react as well. However, after some time of this experiment going on, what they noticed is that the brain would still react right away. However, the heart would react appropriately 6 seconds before the image would appear. Right? Now, this is called heart intuition, right? And again, it's scientifically proven. It's been done many times. So that's why I'm always bringing this up, because high achievers, they want results, and they want things to be, to whatever they do to bring them higher achievements. Well, again, doing something like this, which science is still kind of catching up, does not mean that you're giving up something that you have already accumulated in terms of knowledge, So it's just adding. It's becoming
expanded.
It's expanding yourself more into you, into all of you, right?
Excellent stuff. I want to direct people towards your work and what you're doing in the world. So if you can share a little bit about your business, how you coach people, all this sort of stuff, if you can, literature, guidance, anything that you can lay out for our customers, clients, and friends around the world who might be listening to this and saying, this sounds really interesting. I'd like to know more. I'd like to follow something. I'd like to enter more into my heart. Where do they go? How do they follow you? Where do they find out more information?
Very easy. One-stop shop, heartq.com. That's our page. That's our web, and everything is there. And we offer coaching. We have programs. You have coaching. We have meditations. We have everything there. Our signature program, which is something that we do by yourself or with us, is called Unleash Your Heart. And it basically takes you through the 3 steps of let's open up to the awareness, which is the first part. Let's become aware of, what are my patterns? What are the ways I've been living that's not me? And let's start deconditioning and unbecoming those. Second part is like, okay, well, who am I then? If I'm not these things, then who am I? So the second part is discovering and experiencing who you really are. And then the third part is, now that you know, what does it mean to show up in life and create and choose from that different place? Not just reacting and going along, but now creating alignment, living on purpose. What does that look like? So that's the one that we're the most passionate about. It's our signature program, and we support people, and we do this live or again online. And I know you have actively.
I have, yeah. So I also do coach people one-to-one. And, we're building workshops right now. So there's a lot more there's a lot that we have right now, and a lot more that's coming, because, we're also ever evolving and ever expanding.
Excellent. Awesome podcast. Great chatting about this sort of stuff. I think it's really relevant and exciting field. And I wish you both the best of success. And for our listeners, everything that they discussed here, where you can access the website and stuff, it's all in the show notes here at the Awesome Health Podcast. Of course, if you like it, you can share it with a friend. You hit the like buttons, hit the share, hit the whatever you need to do. If you don't like it, tell us as well. I'd like to hear that feedback as well. So thank you both for joining us today. Really appreciate having you, Madalina and Cris, on the podcast. And for our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it was an invitation for you to discover a little bit more about what a heart-centered life is like. I'm Wei T. Lightheart from Bioptimizers. This is the Awesome Health Podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: how to get away with eating sugar. Hey, look, sugar is normally one of the worst things for you. But let's be honest. I mean, we all cheat from time to time. And here's a little trick that will ensure your body benefits from the sugar. Now, before you eat or drink anything sweet, take 5 to 8 capsules of P3OM. The patented strain in the formula devours sugar so fast it literally doubles in the body every 20 minutes in the presence of sugar. That doesn't mean that you can or you should eat a bunch of sugar or sit around all day doing that. But on the days that you do cheat, or you go after one of those maybe meals that you wouldn't normally do, this ensures that you get something in your gut that eats the sugar. And it's not going to feed the bad guys or spike your blood glucose nearly as much. So to learn more about P3OM and its sugar-devouring and protein-digesting properties and how it can transform your gut and metabolism, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.